In this video, we'll review the Flexi PD Analysis report. This report can be found by selecting Advanced Reports and Pregnancy Analysis, and it's the final tab in the Pregnancy Analysis report. This report is really useful for analysing conception rate in your dairy herds. It allows you to analyse conception rate by a number of different factors. In this case, we're going to start by looking at conception rate by bull. The background of this chart shows the average conception rate across all bulls in the past 2 years. In this case, it's around 45%. Individual stacked bars show the conception rate by each bull. The number of serves by each bull is shown in brackets prior to the bull's name. In this case, we can see that this bull has been used 322 times with an average conception rate around about average, so slightly below 45%. A chi-squared p-value is given at the top of this report. This gives the user an indication of whether any perceived difference in conception rate by, in this case, bulls, is actually statistically significant. A chi-squared p-value of less than 0.05 implies that there is some biological difference between the groups of analysis. In this case, the chi-squared p-value is greater than 0.05, so any perceived differences between the different bulls might be actually just due to chance. As with all TotalVet reports, double-clicking on any of the bars will give you a list of all of the cows that contribute to that bar. Holding Shift and double-clicking gives you a list of all of the cows in that stacked bar chart. And so you can look at the raw data. Another metric that can be quite useful to look at is conception rate by day of the week. In some farms, the number of serves might change by day of the week, or there may be a slightly improved conception rate on different days. This could be related to the weekend. It could also be related to the veterinary routine visit and any synchronization programs that are going on. In this case, there appears to be a slightly better conception rate on Tuesdays than Mondays, although the chi-squared p-value indicates that this is more likely to be due to chance than a true biological difference. Another metric that you might find useful is to look at conception rate by lactation number. In this case, our chi-squared p-value has changed to green and it is less than 0.05, so we can be sure that there is some biological difference between the lactation numbers. If we look more closely at the graph, we can see that lactation 0 appears to have a higher conception rate than the other lactations. Now, this is completely biologically plausible. We would expect parity 0 animals, so non-lactating heifers, to have a higher conception rate than lactating animals. You may want to remove these non-lactating heifers from your analysis. As in other reports, you can do this using the edit criteria function. You can choose to limit the report to animals in lactation greater than 0. This will remove non-lactating animals from the analysis. And now we can see that actually, although there appear to be some differences in conception rate by lactation number, this is no longer significant according to a chi-squared analysis. Another comparison that you might find useful is to look at conception rate by month of service. This can be particularly useful in block calving herds. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that the dates at the bottom of the chart are not chronological. They are ordered by the months in the last 2 years which have had the most serves. If you want to show all of the months in the past 2 years where services have occurred, then you can do this by clicking the top right. The default is that we limit the analysis to 7 comparisons and that we need at least 5 services per month or per group in order for a robust comparison. This is because the chi-squared analysis is reduced in reliability if we have more groups and we have fewer observations. But we can include all of these months over here. So now we can see that the months are chronological. So we've got our autumn to winter service block in 2020, 2021, and then our autumn winter service block in 21, 22. In this case, our conception rate appears to be higher at the start in the first 2 months of the breeding season, dropping off towards the last month of the breeding season, and that seems to have occurred in both 2021 and 2022. The chi-squared analysis indicates that this is not a significant relationship, and so this might be due to chance. If you want to limit the analysis just to the most recent breeding season, then you can change the period in the standard criteria pane. So if we limit that to 12 months, here we can see the conception rate by month over the most recent breeding season. And even though we have evidence that the conception rate numerically is lower in February 2022, it actually isn't still significant by chi-squared analysis. Another comparison that may be useful for users is to look at conception rate by days in milk. So if we limit the period of analysis by 50-day blocks here, we can see services that have occurred in early lactation, so between 50 and 100 days in milk, services that have occurred beyond that and into mid lactation, and then services that have occurred in late lactation, which is likely to be in the following breeding season. So it would appear that numerically we have poorer conception rate in mid lactation. Actually, still we don't have a significant difference by chi-squared analysis. And lastly, we're going to look at conception rate by associated treatments. So this is a question that we get quite commonly, which is, can I analyze conception rate on synchronization programs? In order to do this, you need a data set that's got treatment records in it, but you can click Run Medicines Association. And so the event that we're interested in is services, and we want services where a fertility treatment has been given about a week before the service. So we'll select 7 days before and no days after. And then the drugs that we're interested in looking at are prostaglandins. We'll also look interested in progesterone and GnRH. We're not interested in any of these antibiotic treatments. Now TotalVet is running that analysis. It's associating these treatment events with service events, and we've associated 442 treatments with events. Now that TotalVet has associated these fertility medicines with the service events, we can analyze conception rate by synchronization programs. If you select under the main x-axis medicines used, this chart will show the conception rate for animals that have had no fertility treatments compared to animals that have had a synchronization program using progesterone and prostaglandin in this case. Now, there appears to be a lower conception rate in the synchronized cows compared to the animals that have had no treatment, although this is non-significant by chi-squared analysis. One option we do have is to increase the sample size for analysis. So if we look at it over 2 years, then we increase the number of animals that have been synced. And actually, we can see that the synchronization conception rate does increase a little bit over the past 2 years. And again, this is non-significant by chi-squared analysis. This report also allows you to split the analysis by a second category. Next, we're going to look at the efficacy of sync programs by milk yield. If we restrict the period of analysis to just the last year by selecting 12 months in the standard criteria pane, then under the sub-X category, we can choose yield at event. We can choose the starting yield we want to analyze. So in this case, we're going to choose 10 litres. We want to go up in intervals of, for example, 10 litres at a time. This graph now shows conception rate by sync program, but also taking into consideration what her yield was at the most recent milk recording prior to the service. On the left in blue bars, we've got cows that are giving between 20 and 29 litres. The green bars show cows giving between 30 and 39. The pink bars, 40 to 49, and the orange bars, 50 to 59 litres. And by looking at this graph, we can see that sync programs appear to be less effective in those cows that are giving particularly high yields. So we might want to give some advice to this farmer that in particularly high yielding cows, we don't actually want to attempt any synchronization programs, and we might save those synchronization programs for cows on lower milk yields. I hope you found this training video on the Flexi PD Analysis chart useful. It's a chart that we use a lot at QMMS when we're analysing our clients' fertility data, and I hope that you'll find it useful as well.